It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you this morning. As Reverend Sam mentioned, I'm an animal chaplain ordained through the Compassion Consortium. And I'm here today to talk about something which we don't often hear much about, especially in churches. But it's very much in keeping with our theme of the month, peace, as well as the power of the month, order. Also, September is World Animal Remembrance Month, which is a time to remember, respect, and honor the memory of all animals. In addition to giving us an opportunity to pay tribute to our animal family members who have crossed the Rainbow Bridge, it also gives us an opportunity to remember animal victims of abuse, cruelty, and neglect, animals who are exploited for human use, animals who have died in natural disasters, and threatened and extinct species. So today I'll be speaking on spirituality and our relationships with other than human animals. We'll be exploring the ethical vegetarianism of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, co-founders of the Unity Movement, and its relevance in today's world. The Fillmores believed in a spiritual and compassionate lifestyle that included a vegetarian diet as a key component. Now, I realize that this may be a difficult and uncomfortable topic for many, but I hope you'll stay with me. To quote Finley Peter Dunne, we are here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And I know that being uncomfortable has been the catalyst for me to become a much better person. And don't we all want to grow and evolve into the best versions of ourselves? So let's walk this path of discomfort together with love. Can anyone tell me who made the following statement? Quote, "As we are told in Genesis 1:29, behold, I have given you every herb-yielding seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree-yielding seed. To you it shall be for food." Here is plainly indicated a vegetable and fruit diet for man. When these abundant products of nature, plants, are found spread upon her green garnished tables everywhere, why should man dye his hands with the lifeblood of things that resent the carnage, and cry out in terror when his cruel knife is raised against them? This is in direct opposition to the divine law of freedom and right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all of God's creatures. End quote. This is from one of the co-founders of Unity, Charles Fillmore. It's one of his earliest writings on vegetarianism and appeared in the October 1903 issue of Unity magazine in an article entitled As to Meat Eating, which can be found online and downloaded from truthunity.net. How many of you knew that the Fillmores were ethical vegetarians? I see a few hands coming up there. And does anyone know what convinced them to become vegetarian? I see one. It had a lot to do with the man who was printing their Modern Thought magazine, Harry Church, who was a Seventh-day Adventist and strict vegetarian. It's reported that when attending a dinner at the Fillmores' home, he would ask, "How can you stand to serve murdered things on your table?" He obviously didn't mince words, and the Fillmores took his comments to heart. They became aware of the important connection between diet and spirituality. Soon after, they stopped eating meat and began advocating a vegetarian diet. Myrtle Fillmore explained her decision as an easy one. "The appetite left me without my even thinking about it, and I am sure I outgrew the demand for murdered things." Now bear in mind that they became vegetarian in 1895, almost 50 years before the term vegan was even coined. That was also years before industrial farming, aka factory farming, and CAFOs, confined animal feeding operations, became common. So the situation for animals and for vegetarians was significantly different at that time than it is today. Today it's worse for the animals, but far better and easier for vegetarians and vegans. There is some question as to whether the Fillmores were vegetarian, eliminating meat but continuing to eat eggs and/or dairy, or vegan, eliminating all animal products. But we do know that they were very concerned about the well-being of animals and inspired to do their best to avoid exploitation of any kind. They believed in the oneness of all life. They saw all creatures as expressions of the divine, and argued that consuming animals perpetuated suffering and was incompatible with the spiritual principles of love and compassion. The Fillmores had the courage to live their convictions, and they wrote extensively about their stance on the benefits of vegetarianism, both for the animals and also for humans. In the November 1906 Unity magazine, it is written, "Man is somehow beginning to feel the responsibility in bringing harmony to the world, and many people are falling in tune with the great harmony of love by thinking loving, true thoughts, and demonstrating this love toward all of God's creatures by leaving them outside of their stomach. And if a man holds to thoughts of love and then goes out and takes the life of a fellow creature to satisfy a false appetite, his loving thoughts will be of little avail, for he sends forth ideas of killing, which counteract the ones of love." An article by Grandma Fillmore in this same issue of Unity magazine provided a recipe for mince pie without the meat, and also provided recipes for muffins, gingerbread, and johnny cake without using milk or eggs. And in a section entitled New Thought Diet, it provided information on preparing vegetarian food, including mashed potatoes, peanut roast, brown gravy, and some fruit and vegetable dishes, all without using eggs or dairy. Also in 1906, Unity Inn of Kansas City opened and could serve as many as 200 guests at a time. At its peak, it served 10,000 vegetarian meals per week and was one of the largest vegetarian cafeterias in the world. In 1911, the Unity Pure Food Company opened in Kansas City, Missouri, with the purpose of introducing food products to take the place of meats, according to an article in the June 28, 1911 Weekly Unity. A quote from the Unity magazine in February 1911, "To say I am love and then eat the flesh of a poor tortured animal is inconsistent, and the partaker of the food is guilty of the slaughter." And from the tract Flesh Eating Metaphysically Considered, "But the master on the spiritual plane is not a slave driver. He does not use force. The only law he recognizes is love. He must recognize all life as God's life and destined by a wise hand to be in its right place wherever he finds it. Thus, he cannot in any way sanction the killing of animals for food, nor can he give passive assent by eating the flesh of those slain by the hands of ignorant men. He recognizes the right of every creature to fill out the full measure of its years without interference on the part of man." Unquote. In 1915, Unity introduced a special Bible for vegetarians with a plant-based leather alternative called keratin, assuring readers that no life would be sacrificed in its publishing. When asked why Unity didn't publish leather-bound books, they replied that, quote, "Unity opposes the use of any product that necessitates the taking of life, whether it's food substance, wearing apparel, or general utility." Unquote. It's interesting to note that these are essentially the vegan principles outlined on the Vegan Society's website. Veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. And in 1921, Charles Fillmore wrote the Unity Statement of Faith, which was a list of affirmations of what was believed to be true. It consisted of 32 statements written in response to criticism from some Christians that Unity was abandoning the doctrines of Christianity. One of those statements was the following: "We believe that all life is sacred, and that man should not kill or be a party to the killing of animals for food. Also, that cruelty, war, and wanton destruction of human life will continue so long as men destroy animals." This is similar to a sentiment expressed by Leo Tolstoy when he said that As long as there are slaughterhouses, there will be battlefields. After some controversy, this statement was removed in 1939. But I would like for us to remember that this was a crucial part of the original Unity teachings as written by Charles Fillmore. Some things to consider. In this country alone, we kill some 1 million chickens, 14,000 pigs, and 4,000 cows every hour. So in the time it takes for me to deliver this talk, approximately 254,500 chickens, pigs, and cows are slaughtered. That's approximately half the population of Sedgwick County in under 15 minutes. And that doesn't even include the countless fish or other animals killed for food. So the magnitude of the violence and death is almost incomprehensible. Now consider the people who have to do all of this killing. Many of these workers are people of color living in low-income communities. The turnover rate of slaughterhouses often exceeds 100% annually. The work is very dangerous with long hours, repetitive stress, health and safety hazards, and emotional distress. According to Human Rights Watch, the animal slaughtering and processing industry has had among the highest rates of occupational injury and illness in the US for decades. But the physical injury is only the beginning. The job of killing takes a tremendous emotional, mental, and spiritual toll as well. A former kill floor manager gives the following account. The worst thing, worse than the physical danger, is the emotional toll. Pigs down on the kill floor have come up and nuzzled me like a puppy. 2 minutes later, I had to kill them, beat them to death with a pipe. I can't care. And one former slaughterhouse employee wrote for BBC, I didn't suffer physical injuries, but the place affected my mind. At night, my mind would taunt me with nightmares, replaying some of the horrors I'd witnessed. One skill that you master while working at an abattoir is disassociation. You learn to become numb to death and to suffering. That desensitization can cross over to humans as well. Often workers turn to drugs and alcohol to help them cope with the trauma of their work. And studies have found links between slaughterhouse work and increased crime rates, including domestic violence, sex offenses including rape, murder, assault, burglary, arson, theft, and larceny. So how can we expect or even hope for peace on earth with this tremendous amount of violence, suffering, and death happening nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Another quote from Flesh Eating Metaphysically Considered. Every animal will fight for its life. What then can be the mental condition of the animal that has been cruelly forced into contracted pens and cars and finally deprived of its body amid the most terrifying circumstances? Can it be otherwise than that its entire consciousness is permeated by violent vibrations of terror that act and react upon all planes of animal life with which they come in contact? The power of the month for September is order. Lowell Fillmore, Charles and Myrtle's son, wrote, "Divine order is the perfect love of God expressing itself harmoniously in his creation. When a man promotes the expression of divine order in his body and affairs by consciously conforming to God's plan, he experiences a greater degree of order in all his affairs. Having free will, man can bring his affairs into better order by willingly accepting God's orderly plan. When we are in tune with divine order, we are safe, happy, wise, patient, kind, forgiving, and unafraid. Let us now enter into the spirit of divine order and abide there while we co-operate with God in establishing the harmonious kingdom of heaven upon the earth, here and now. But what happens to divine order when we consume animals? According to Charles Fillmore in As to Meat Eating, when man eats an animal, divine order is disturbed. The animal is denied the right of expression, and man clogs his system with sewage and second-hand food. Now, this is all just a very small sampling of their writings on this subject. So, considering these writings and knowing that some of the worst animal cruelty is perpetrated against cows exploited for their milk and chickens exploited for their eggs, I'm confident that if they were alive today, the Fillmores would most likely be vegan. There is much more online, and in Unity Minister Reverend Carol Saunders' booklet, The Forgotten Teachings of Charles Fillmore, how our relationship with animals connects to universal love, ethical living, spiritual development, world peace. I have a few copies of that available here today for anyone who would like to take a look at it. Some of you know my story, growing up in an agricultural community and working in my dad's poultry hatchery. So I found it very difficult to buck the system and go vegetarian approximately 35 years ago. But I got to the point where I could no longer justify my desire to eat meat over an animal's right to live. I was vegetarian for about 20 years before I finally had to acknowledge the inconvenient and painful truth that I could no longer deny. There are virtually no retirement homes or pastures for spent dairy cows or laying hens. After their productivity declines or ceases, they end up in the slaughterhouse, just the same as the cows and chickens raised for meat. So by continuing to consume eggs and dairy, I was still contributing to the suffering and death of the chickens and the cows. When that realization finally sunk in, I knew that I could no longer be a part of that. While it was a difficult decision for me at the time, my only regret, as many vegans will say, is that I didn't do it sooner. It filled me with an inner peace and a profound joy that I had not felt before. As Franz Kafka put it, now I can look at you in peace. I don't eat you anymore. There are a multitude of other reasons to eliminate animal products from your diet, which I don't have time to go into today. One concern the Fillmores did not address, because it wasn't as much of an issue at the time, are the devastating ecological costs of animal agriculture. Raising animals for food contributes significantly to deforestation, biodiversity loss, air and water pollution, freshwater usage, which, as we all know, is becoming increasingly important, ocean dead zones, and climate impact. But the great news is that we have the power to change all of this. We have the power to create a world that works for everyone, human and other than human. I invite you to try some of the delicious vegan options we have available today. Of course, the healthiest options remain the fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, legumes, and seeds. But today there is now an abundance of plant-based meats, milks, and cheeses. And there are some samples of some vegan treats out there today. Everything on our coffee hour today is vegan. There's almost nothing that cannot or has not been veganized. There's even now a vegan hard-boiled egg, which I hear is quite tasty. I haven't tried it myself. But to quote Reverend Saunders, within us are the powers of release, the ability to let go of old thoughts, beliefs, and habits. Will, the ability to make new choices. And strength, the ability to stay the course. Any habit can be changed when we put spiritual principles to work. I'm also a vegan lifestyle coach and educator, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have. I have some free literature in the fellowship hall and will be available following the service for anyone with questions or concerns. I also have a sign-up sheet for anyone interested in a discussion group using Reverend Carol Saunders' booklet. There is some vegan coffee creamer and a few, as I mentioned, a few vegan treats for you to sample, so I hope you'll stay around and visit. Thank you for sticking with me. I appreciate your attention on this uncomfortable topic. And in conclusion, I encourage you to think deeply about the words in our closing song that we sing each week, expanding our vision to include all of creation, not just humanity. With God as our creator, loved ones all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Thank you.